Hello, 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 and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jen, and today I want to talk to you guys about the difference between playing victim and having a victim mentality versus actually being victimized or actually being attacked, because there is a difference. There are subtle differences, but they are differences. And when you have the level of mindfulness and discernment to tell the difference, then you can more easily determine whether you're dealing with someone who's toxic versus whether you're dealing with someone who is just having a really difficult time with something or another, right? So something that I've noticed in my personal life, as well as overall in general with the whole Me Too hashtag, is that there's a lot of victim blaming that goes on. It's kind of disturbing because this completely removes the responsibility from the perpetrator, and the victim gets blamed for even standing up for themselves or speaking out, which shouldn't happen, really shouldn't happen. However, it does. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the differences, the subtle differences between playing victim and actually being a victim in a circumstance, which you don't want to hold on to it. Obviously, if you're being picked on or bullied or harassed or abused in some way, that's not your fault. That is not your fault, and that is not your responsibility. Now, of course, leading up to something like this happening, you may have said or done some things to get it to that point. However, enough is enough. You see what I'm saying? Enough is enough. And it's not your job to take responsibility for something that someone else did to you. For example, someone who raped you, right? That's not your fault. Now, there are certain types of people who will make everything your fault. And these types of people are typically known as narcissists. Unfortunately, the term narcissist is thrown around very, very lightly these days. And the people who actually do the research and learn more about what narcissistic personality disorder actually looks like versus what everybody else kind of throws around as a term for their ex these days, you know what I mean? When you know the deeper levels, when you have a deeper understanding of what narcissistic personality disorder does and how it presents and what the tactics and manipulation type things are that these people will throw at you, then you can really learn to kind of tell the difference, you know, and protect yourself, recognize the signs. Anyway, that's not the point of this video though. This video is about learning to understand the difference between playing victim and having a victim mentality just because, or actually being harassed or bullied or whatever. Okay? So you have to have a level of self-awareness and a certain level of discernment. One way to go about doing this is to ask yourself and be honest, okay? Ask yourself, did someone hurt me intentionally, provoked or unprovoked? And if provoked, was the revenge reaction proportionate to your action, or did it automatically escalate, right? And if it did escalate, how much did it escalate? And unfortunately, if you feed into it, it escalates more, especially when you're dealing with narcissists, because it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? So if you are self-aware enough that you understand what is your responsibility and what is not, right? As an example, I was with someone, we had an argument, and I left to take a walk. And I came back, and he had carved the word pain into his left forearm while I was gone. And the first words out of his mouth when I walked in the door were, "Look what you made me do." Wait a minute. That's not my responsibility. That wasn't my decision. I didn't hold a knife. I didn't put a gun to his head. Fuck, I wasn't even there. So this is one example of playing the victim, right? Because if this person were to take responsibility, that's kind of painful when you first have to do that. When you first have to take responsibility for your part in something, it can hit you like really hard. And I know this because it's happened to me numerous times when I am being honest with myself and I say, okay, this is my responsibility. All that other shit though, that other person's actions, that is not my fault at all. It is not my fault. There have been some very recent situations where I've had to do that. And the other thing to remember is you can't force someone else to take responsibility for their part. If they don't want to take personal responsibility for their part in something, that says way more about them than it does about you. Or me, for that matter. So, when someone is playing the victim all the time, what happens? It's a form of seeking attention and seeking what feels kind of like love, but really is pity. And it tends to be a little bit addictive, you know, like any other addiction, it can escalate. And when this kind of victim mentality escalates, then it can lead you to things like Munchausen by proxy. If you don't know what that is, this is usually presented in women who work in the medical field, and they will actually go to great lengths to make their own children sick or injured or hurt or whatever because they're addicted to the attention. It's fucked up, right? Yeah, I know. So, and this is just a sickness, you know what I mean? Deep down at the core of the person, they probably know that they're doing something wrong, but trying to fess up to or take responsibility for years of this type of disease can be extremely painful and not necessarily pleasant. You have to work through a lot, and you have to forgive yourself as well as others a lot. And without that forgiveness, well, it just festers. It festers and then it grows. Things keep piling on. Things keep getting added on. Unfortunately, that makes your soul feel very, very heavy. Makes you feel very, very heavy. Holds you down. Because you haven't yet done the shadow work, the working through old emotions and releasing them, looking at your mistakes with love, looking at your sins, I guess, with a loving attitude, and going through the pain and feeling it and then letting it go. And if you don't know how to do that, something that really helps is meditating. And also, I recently had my first somatic experiencing session, which was really, really helpful to me because now I kind of know how to do it. And it's basically paying attention to your body, paying attention to where your emotions feel the most impactful within your body, and then allowing them to just kind of run their course while you're looking at them, while you're paying attention to them, while you're focused on them. And then waiting until it goes away, until it fades out. Because it does. It always does. But once you've faced that, once you've looked at it, once you've really felt it, you will feel like a weight is lifted off of you, off of your spirit, off of your body. You will feel much lighter. So there's some good, like, advice that you can kind of do on your own, you know, to start healing yourself, because healing is the most important thing. If you've ever been in a situation where you're harassed or abused or, you know, otherwise mistreated, healing yourself is the best way to start moving forward and bettering your life. Because if you don't let go of all that old hurt and pain, then you have a tendency to kind of get stuck there, and that really sucks. So, when someone is playing the victim, basically, no matter what they've done wrong, no matter what action they've taken, it is always someone else's fault. Even if it was completely disproportionate to what triggered the reaction in the first place, right? So that's one of the differences. That's a big difference. Now, the other thing to look out for is that if you do have a conversation with someone whom you are maybe trying to heal a relationship with after a lot of escalation, maybe it went back and forth, maybe they feel justified, and they refuse to go and seek the help that they need with you in order to start healing, because oftentimes the problems are too big for you to handle on your own, right? The problems fester, like I said, it gathers up and it gathers momentum within your being. And these energies don't just disappear. They sit somewhere in your body, and they can cause all kinds of problems. Disease, heart disease has been linked to depression. Depression, what's the root cause of depression? Probably some kind of mistreatment. Same with anxiety. Anxiety has been linked to all sorts of heart problems and other diseases. And, you know, it's also been proven that holding a grudge and nursing resentment is linked to health problems, is linked to things like, I can't even remember, but it's because your fight or flight instinct is constantly triggered, first of all. And second of all, because it raises the levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone in your body. And it also depletes the love hormone oxytocin. So you're upping the stress and lowering the happiness, basically. Your body is a very, very complex system that is basically a vehicle for your soul to be driving, right? This is how I've come to understand it. Your soul is driving this meat suit. And, sorry. And when you have all this negative energy building up within it, your emotions are supposed to be your guidance system. So if you feel like shit, then you're probably heading in the wrong direction. If you feel good and you feel alive and you feel inspired, that's how you know you're on the right track, right? So if you want to know more about this, because this also goes hand in hand with law of attraction, right? If your vibrational state, if your emotional state of being is constantly in this negative and you allow it to build and pick up momentum, then it's going to be really, really difficult to stop and turn around and head the other direction, right? So it's better, once you figure this out, to begin cultivating your own happiness, begin cultivating your own joy. Happiness is a skill. It's not something that you get from the outside in. That is very fleeting, superficial happiness. Your happiness comes from your soul and from your attitude and from being able to know how to direct your emotional energy without suppressing your emotions. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So when someone is addicted to playing the victim, okay, the last thing that they want to do is admit any kind of fault. The last thing that they want to do is take responsibility for anything, because guess what? That means admitting that they're wrong, or at least partially wrong. And if you're dealing with a very superficial and prideful kind of person, like I have come to understand a narcissist to be, especially a covert narcissist, then the chances of you actually getting any kind of acknowledgement of ownership of their part in whatever the conflict was is slim to none. Even if they do take responsibility for something, expect it to be turned back around on you. Expect it, because that's how these people operate. So, and these are specifically toxic types of people that I'm talking about. So, if you find yourself in a conversation where every response is something that could be equated to, I know you are, but what am I? Then there's a good chance that you're dealing with a narcissist and you're dealing with someone who is addicted to victimhood and playing the victim. This is a mental disorder. This is a personality disorder. It's not who this person is at their core, I don't believe. But there are so many layers of shit that they've allowed to pile on top of themselves that they don't know how to even begin to work through it. It's easier not to. It's easier to be stubborn. They'll go as far as completely losing relationships in order to maintain their ego, maintain their pride. And that's sad. It's very sad. It's very bad for you too. But there's nothing you can do about that, right? I can't control other people. I can't control other people and their personalities. That's not my job. What my job is to release them and to let go of all the pain that they have caused and forgive them. And if necessary, love them from afar. You know, sometimes that's what you have to do. And this is what I keep being told by everyone. My current situation is pretty crazy, but I won't get into details. But when it's proven time and time again that talking and healing is not of interest to this person, then it might be time to just let them go. So, projecting blame onto others for your own actions is the opposite of personal accountability. It is literally blaming someone else for something that you've done, and they have misconstrued your actions or reactions into being exactly what they did to you in the first place. So that's how projection works. And whatever hurt that they're not dealing with on a subconscious level will come out and project itself onto someone else. More than likely an empath, if it's a narcissist especially, because the narcissist-empath relationship, it's like an addiction to them, you know? They have to be able to feed off of your emotional energy. So if you starve that emotional energy, if you starve them of that, then chances are that they will find another victim. Either that or they'll completely start to crumble. And as sad as this is, don't martyr yourself and don't give up your own happiness because you feel obligated to someone who blames you for everything. It's not worth it. You have your entire life to live. Do you really want to spend it taking on other people's shit as your own? Do you really want to I don't know, it just sits very, very wrong with me, you know? It sits extremely wrong. And I know it's extremely wrong. But trying to tell someone that when they're completely convinced that they're right and they have no interest at all whatsoever in taking responsibility for their part, there's nothing you can do about it, you know? That's pretty much all I have as far as the differences go. When you're dealing with someone who is capable of being honest with themselves, who is capable of admitting to being in the wrong, at least partially, then you know that this person is actually interested in mending things and healing things. However, when you're dealing with someone who has to be right no matter what, at the cost of whatever it might be, and sometimes the cost is very, very great, then you know that you're probably dealing with someone who's a narcissist or otherwise disordered, some kind of personality disorder. I haven't done much research into other personality disorders yet because the covert narcissist personality disorder is what I am researching right now as far as toxic people are concerned. And that's because I have had to interact and deal with several different narcissists just in the course of the last 15 months. And when they see that you're open-minded and that you're confident and that you are decent-hearted, good-hearted even, then they tend to want to tear that down because they don't know what that feels like. They don't understand what feelings really are. They can't put themselves in somebody else's shoes because they lack the capacity for empathy. So that means they also don't know how to love unconditionally. They don't. Typically, they lean more towards control, force, manipulation, coercion. And this is extremely damaging. This is extremely damaging, especially to someone who's highly sensitive or who is an empath, right? So some of the damage that it causes, and this is not usually apparent until years and years after the abuse, you know, or years and years of abuse later, because a lot of it is just subconscious programming. And isolated incidents don't look like much. They really don't. It's the adding up of all of the different incidents and all of the different weird words and weird situations that you come across when you think back, you know what I mean? All of these things that feel wrong somehow, but you accept because you accept the person as they are and actually believe that they might know what's best for you, even though you're the only person who knows what's best for you in reality, okay, in non-delusional reality, then, you know, it's one of those things where it's really difficult to break free from it, you know, because this is all you know. You've got nothing to compare it to in a lot of cases. So if you find yourself waking up to something like this and realizing that, you know, whatever relationship it is falling apart because you're tired of feeling horrible, then, and why should you feel horrible in a relationship? People have this misconception that a relationship is all sacrifice, you know, it's all take, you know, and usually the taker is a narcissist and the giver is an empath. And then the giver ends up wondering, why the hell do I feel so horrible all the time? What's wrong with this picture? And it might take a while for you to put your finger on it, you know? It took me, I was married to my ex-husband for 3 years before I left. And it took me 3 months after that of writing and researching and, you know, learning and stuff about abuse and abuse tactics and things like that to realize that spousal rape is actually a thing, to realize that crying myself to sleep after sex was not normal, and it was because I didn't trust myself enough. You know, I believed what everybody else was telling me. I believed that other people had my best interests at heart when they did not. They were just trying to take advantage. And this has been a very, very eye-opening experience. You know, I've had many, many eye-opening experiences. And especially the last year, you know, there are obvious, blatant forms of abuse. And then there are covert manipulations and various different tactics that certain people use that don't seem like much in and of themselves. But when you get some clarity, and you look back and realize, you know, that this is not what love looks like. This is not what unconditional love looks like. And the capacity for loving someone unconditionally, it just doesn't exist within a narcissistic personality disordered person. They have no empathy. None. They don't have the imagination or the heart, the capacity in their heart to actually put themselves in your shoes. So no matter what you're going through or what's happening with them, you know, what's happening with them will always trump you. And it will always be more important and more painful. And, you know, one-upping is a big thing. You know what I mean? Because they have to be the bigger victim than you are. And it has to be your fault, you know? So if you find yourself in a situation like this, don't try to force anybody to think anything a certain way. Don't try to force someone else to heal. Don't try to force someone else to do anything. It's not going to work. As a matter of fact, it'll probably make things worse. I learned this the hard way because I spent a good few months fighting back and standing up and trying to put up boundaries that I should have had my entire life but was never taught how to put up. And those boundaries have never been respected at all, nor are they being respected. To this day, the people that I'm dealing with right now, my parents, they think that I am still 8, 9, 10. You know what I mean? They think that grounding a 20-something-year-old is normal, and I thought it was normal too. I was living under their roof. And they think that control and force, like you would use with maybe a kid who's, you know, 8, 9, 10 or under, right? That these things still work on adults. And actually what happens is that this completely stunts the growth of the individual that they're raising and keeps them trapped in a childish mentality. Now, they have told me time and time again with their words, we just want you to grow up and be independent. Yet, the second I start doing anything to further myself, there's something wrong with it, you know? There's something that they find fault with, and they tear it down. Every time. Never fails. Never fails. The other thing is that they will use whatever, if someone is playing the victim, I'm glad I kept talking because this just came to mind. If someone is playing the victim all the time, and I'm not innocent of this either, okay? I have done this myself before, where I take on too much and I feel overwhelmed after that, and then I feel taken advantage of. But this is also part of learning where your boundaries are, right? Because if you don't have those boundaries up, then you don't know how to tell people no. And this is not good, because telling people no empowers you. Someone wants you to do something for free, you better tell them no unless you absolutely are sure that you're able to commit to this, you know? So what someone in perpetual victim mentality might do is offer help, right? And offer resources or whatever it might be. They might offer you a loan. They might offer to help you out. They might offer to give you a large gift. Excuse me. They might offer to give you a large gift, right? Someone in perpetual victim mentality will use that against you later to make you feel obligated to do something that they want you to do. And it will be completely disproportionate, right? One example that I have is someone gave my daughter $100, and in exchange, my daughter was required to commit to working 4 hours a week for about 6 months, for about a semester, right? Maybe not 6 months, it's probably more like 4. But we did the math, and at the end of that, it would come out to about $1 an hour. Now, I don't give a shit how old you are, that's a ripoff. You know what I mean? Especially if you're an adolescent who does a good job, right? Who cares about the work that they're doing, who does their best. And my daughter is that kind of person, you know? So I found it very disturbing that this particular individual who did that felt betrayed when we started to try and put up some boundaries, you know? So this whole betrayal thing that this person is feeling probably is going to be yet another thing that they will hold over our heads and play the victim about. Oh, well, I did all this for you, blah, 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 and you don't appreciate it at all, blah, blah, blah. And there's a big difference between appreciating someone's help versus knowing that you've already done more than the balance would have you do, you know? It's completely an unbalanced relationship. So someone might, I don't know, say give you a car, right? A beater, whatever, an A to B car. And 2 years later, throw it back in your face. Or someone might help you leave an abusive husband, and then a decade later, throw it back in your face and tell you you should have stayed there. This is what happened to me. Now, bitterness, resentment, these are not things that I like to feel. These are disgusting, yucky feelings, and they do nothing to further my cause, to further my career, to further my family. They do absolutely nothing. If anything, they make me sick and they hold me back. Therefore, I have been working a lot and researching a lot about forgiveness of yourself, of others, and of life circumstances. And forgiving, if you have a tendency to blame God, forgiving God, because guess what? You still have free will. Take responsibility, you know? And I can tell you that it is difficult at first because, and it feels like somebody like punched you in the stomach, maybe, or someone maybe like zapped your heart with a taser. It sucks. It sucks. But once you do that, once you feel it, once you realize, oh my God, this is my fault, then you get the feeling of the weight being lifted. Because you have admitted and you have owned and you have taken responsibility for your part, which means now you recognize the source of trauma that you may have caused, right? And then you can work through it and heal it and seek forgiveness from the person that you hurt. And even if they don't forgive you right away, which sometimes they don't, but even if they don't forgive you ever, you did your part. You did what you had to do, and you can now forgive yourself. So this turned out to be pretty long, but I hope that it helps you to differentiate between understanding, between victim mentality and actual victimization. And victim blaming is not okay. Victim blaming is not okay. Another really good example is the weekend that this crazy harassing stalker woman shoved me at the bar. By the end of the night, it was all my fault. And I was drunk and I was crazy and blah, blah, blah. And that was the gossipy, sheeple talking. And unfortunately, I wasn't even drunk. I was completely sober. I had a few beers. But I was there, and this woman managed to turn every single person in that bar into her follower because she's a fucking narcissist. Imagine. I get shoved, and it's my fault? Really? I didn't do that to myself. Did I? I don't think so. So, recognizing, being able to discern the subtleties, okay? That will help you to take responsibility for your part, but also to recognize what is not your responsibility. Because when you carry around the responsibility for other people's actions, you're martyring yourself, and you're carrying around this weight that you don't need. And it's not cool. It's really not. So having dealt with a lot of people of this particular genre, I guess, the narcissistic personality disorder, I can tell you that it's extremely damaging. I can also tell you that the more you fight back, the more they fight back. And the less your point gets across, if it even gets across at all, because these people don't have the capacity to wrap their head around anything besides themselves, besides what they're feeling, because again, they have no empathy. Zero. No capacity for putting themselves in someone else's position at all. And this is unfortunately how you come across people who bring false accusations in court, especially during separation or divorce or custody battle. 70% of abuse and assault and sexual abuse accusations during custody or divorce cases that are brought by women, those accusations are false. 70%. That's fucking huge. That's a problem, right? Which is why I would like to invite you, if you have a story about someone like this, I have an anthology called Soul Vomit that is specifically for raising awareness and helping people who have been in abusive situations to get out. And not all abuse is physical. There's spiritual abuse, there's verbal, there's emotional abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's all kinds of different kinds of abuse. So this theme of Soul Vomit, the current theme, is domestic violence reversed. So basically, female abusers who typically do not resort to physical violence against their partners. Sometimes they do, but submissions are being accepted right now, and I would like to get this published sometime in 2018, so I'm hoping to hear from you guys. And I would like to know about the subtle types of abuse, such as manipulation tactics, lying, triangulation, emotional abuse, force, coercion, control. These things are all non-physical, but they are damaging. And it's not your fault. If you have been the victim of this kind of abuse and would like to speak out, feel comfortable speaking out, then go ahead and head on over to soulvomit.com, and you can find the submission guidelines in the page there. Having said all that, this is a pretty long video. I hope you guys are doing all right here. Still paying attention a little bit, yeah? I really just wanted to get this out there because, partially because of the situation that I'm going through right now, so it's kind of an inspired vlog topic for me to share. I also want to eventually record a video about different types of manipulation tactics with examples, because I have seen all of these at play firsthand, and I can tell you that it's extremely frustrating trying to even point it out to anybody because it gets glossed over like it's nothing. And you're the enemy. You're the scapegoat, right? Now, that's the other thing, is if you're dealing with someone who's toxic, you're always going to be to blame. It's just the way it is. Your best bet is to walk away. I hope you guys are enjoying your evening, your week, and I hope that you come back soon to my YouTube channel and maybe subscribe, maybe like a few videos, maybe share some. If you find this information useful and it resonates with you, then, or even if you think it might help someone that you know, then go ahead and share. And I am hoping that my crazy, crappy experiences which I've already worked through my part of it, you know, make no mistake. That's why I'm not all emotionally like raw about it anymore, you know. I can't stay stuck in that mindset. I can't. It's not healthy. So if you feel like this might help someone, then please share and hit the subscribe and the like buttons for me. And I will see you guys in the next video. Oh, and P.S. If you recognize one of these stories as having involved you and you call yourself out in the comments, that is not my problem, nor is it my fault. And I have not mentioned any names, nor have I mentioned any specifics, nor have I mentioned anything that could be considered slander. So therefore, if you're going to call yourself out, then you are to blame. You have to take responsibility for calling yourself out, because as it stands right now, this is just my vlog and my stories and my life experience to teach others and to teach myself how to better deal and how to better live and how to live in a thriving, abundant way rather than a fear-based, controlling way. So I think that's it. I will see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you found this useful. Again, if you want to submit your story, go to soulvomit.com and I will see you in the next video.